Welcome to Power Your Life Today. I'm Kristy Jo, mind and body strategist and founder of Body Buddies. You can learn more about Body Buddies and the nutrition and fitness that's my main platform over at body-buddies.com. Today in Power Session number 53, I'm talking with Amy Morin. The story of how I found her is kind of fun. I was actually just studying mental discipline, won a little crash course of TEDx videos and came across her talk. And I watched it not only once, but 3 times. And I thought, this woman is onto something that my listeners need to hear. So I reached out to her and she agreed to come on the podcast with me to share some of these insights. Let me just briefly share with you some of her background. At a young age, Amy thought she was on top of the world. She was married, she had graduated, she had a great job, she bought a home, and she was really enjoying her life. But within a few years of being in those mid-20 years, she not only lost her mother, but then her husband, and then, after remarrying, her new husband's father. Death and loss enveloped her. Instead of crumbling, she sat down to write out what beliefs mentally strong people do not have, and that was to keep her focused. Well, she shared it online and she's received quite a lot of attention since then. She is a licensed clinical social worker, psychotherapist, and lecturer at Northeastern University. She is the author of the international best-selling book now, 13 Things Mentally Strong People Don't Do. Her new book, 13 Things Mentally Strong Parents Don't Do, goes on sale September 19th, 2017. She gave one of the top 50 TEDx talks of all time, and her advice has been featured by media outlets across the planet, ranging from MTV in Finland to CNN in Mexico. We are so lucky to have her here with us today. In this episode, we are going to discuss what it looks like to go through emotion and not run from it, how to know when enough time has passed that you should now stop being sad, the 3 destructive beliefs that mentally strong people do not have, how to shift your focus when you feel stuck and when you're hosting a pity party, and finally, what situations cause us to give away our power and how we can start taking it back. You're going to love this. You may need to listen to it a few times, and definitely encourage you to watch her TEDx talk that originally led me to her. You can just click on the show notes on your smartphone and the link will be there. All right, let's now go into the interview. Okay, so tell us, you're a licensed clinical social worker, psychotherapist, and lecturer at Northeastern University. And our audience has heard just a little bit about, some of the things you've written and, of course, the story of how I found you. And so tell us a little bit about the backstory before we dive into some of these mental discipline tools. But I'm just curious, how did you decide you wanted to get into working with the mind?
So my first major in college, I was a pre-med student. I thought I was going to be a doctor. And the very first day of college classes, we were dissecting cats. And everybody else in my class was really excited to dive in and dissect cats, and I wasn't. And it occurred to me that very first day of college, maybe this isn't for me. I like the idea of being a doctor, but if I'm not excited about getting in there and dissecting something, perhaps this isn't actually for me. And so I changed my major that day and decided I was meant to work with people from the neck up rather than the neck down, and decided that I wanted to go into the mental health rather than physical health realm.
Wow. Well, I don't blame you. I once tried to dissect a pig in my own dad's anatomy class in high school, and I thought, yeah, that's never going to happen.
Right.
So in your TED Talk, you say that at the age of 23, that's when you thought you were on top of the world, right? That's when things were going really well.
Yes.
Yeah, where everything was out there and how you were looking at the world and you're like, yes, I'm doing it. Everything's working out great.
Right. So by the time I was 23, I had graduated grad school, gotten a job as a therapist, got married, had a house, even became licensed foster parent. So it was sort of like, okay, we're only 23, but we have this jump start. and here we go. That life is, now that we've sort of got all of that stuff out of the way, what could go wrong? I was like, we're really launching our careers. This is going to be great. And was really excited about getting everything going from there.
And then you started to realize that perhaps things weren't as cheery So it wasn't just one difficult thing, not just two, but I believe there were 3 difficult things you shared in the talk. And kind of give us the summary of that to provide, the reason why we're going to talk about these mental discipline tools.
So life is as it's smooth sailing. One random Sunday evening, I get a phone call from my sister, and she said her mom was in the hospital. I couldn't quite figure out what she was trying to tell me. And once we hung up the phone, I just said to my husband, Lincoln, we need to go to the hospital. And when we got there, the doctors explained that my mother had had a brain aneurysm. And by the next day, she had passed away. And my mother was only 51. She didn't have any history of health problems. So it was just surreal. I had seen her just the previous evening, and she was fine. Now she was gone. And so it was really one of those moments of what a reminder of how life can change in an instant. And my mother and I had been very close, and I had never experienced such a huge loss before. So the thought of, now what do I do? How do I move forward? And as a therapist, I knew that our tendency when we go through tough times and we experience all those uncomfortable emotions, we try to go around them because it's uncomfortable to go through them. But I had seen people who had gone through some sort of challenge in their life, and if it was 20 years ago, but they had never really dealt with it, they'd never really been able to move forward, and that became a sticking point in their life, and life was never, they were never really able to enjoy life to its fullest again, and I didn't want that to happen. So I knew that if I wanted to heal from it, I had to go through the pain and to deal with grief, and grief is the process by which we heal, and it's a hard, long, messy process, but it took a long time before I started to feel better. And then on the 3-year anniversary of when my mother passed away, my 26-year-old husband died of a heart attack. And he hadn't had any history of health problems either. And we think now he was probably born with a birth defect with his heart. It just had never been diagnosed, and doctors tell us even if it had, there wouldn't have been anything we could have done about it. But I was one of those things, again, now I'm a 26-year-old widow. I don't have my mom. And he was fine one minute, and then he was gone the next. And really had to dig deep to figure out, how do I find this inner strength that I didn't even know that I had, and make sure that someday I'm not still, that I don't feel like I'm wounded. I wanted to figure out, is there a way to come out of this even stronger? And it took a lot of time, a lot of hard work. But years later, I started to, feel like, okay, I'm developing a new life for myself, a new sense of normal, honoring what I had, and I'm grateful that I had my first husband in my life, but was also feeling like I had hope for the future. And around that same time, I was fortunate to find love again. I got remarried, and shortly after that, however, my father-in-law got diagnosed with terminal cancer. And when I had lost my mother and my first husband, even it was sudden, unexpected. And this one was different for me because I knew what was coming. The doctors had given my father-in-law a really grim prognosis. We didn't know whether we were looking at weeks or months, but we knew it wasn't going to be a long-term thing. And I was starting to think, this isn't fair. Why do I have to lose somebody? Something good finally happens. Now something bad happens. And it was in that moment that I thought, nope, mentally strong people don't do that. So I wrote the list of all the things I could come up with that mentally strong people don't do, those bad habits that could keep me stuck. And when I was done, I thought, well, this is helpful to me. And if it's helpful to me, maybe it could help somebody else. I published it online, and 50 million people read the article. Wasn't anything I had ever anticipated, expected, or even imagined. But what most people didn't know when I wrote it, it was really just the list of the 13 things, but people didn't know that it was a letter to myself, and I needed it. Within a couple of weeks of writing it, my father-in-law had passed away.
Wow. So here's a few interesting notes I want to point out to our audience, and I want you to help me unpack them. So first of all, this episode and everything is about mental discipline tools and things that you point out, destructive beliefs, things that people do when they want to basically stay in pain, stay in suffering, and how we don't do those. And that's what mentally strong people do. But on the side of being a human, there's a lot of emotion that comes before that. And like you mentioned, some people probably most people try to go around emotion instead of through them. And I'm just curious that before we dive into like, yay, let's build and be strong and work our minds, what is this aspect of emotion? And for those people who have never maybe done any real personal development work or therapy, what does that look like to go through emotion?
So sometimes our tendency, and mine included, and even though I knew on an intellectual level that these certain things are unhealthy, it's a matter of just wanting to do it. So when you're experiencing sadness, it's okay to be sad. So often we look for ways to try to cheer ourselves up. And well, it's okay to do that sometimes. You also need to be sad to honor what you've lost. And so sometimes that means letting yourself be lonely or letting yourself be angry. 'Cause it's really tempting sometimes to just busy yourself with a hobby or distract yourself or surround yourself with people all the time so that you can escape it or avoid it or suppress it. But you just have to let yourself feel it sometimes. And the trick is you don't want to stay stuck there. You don't want to get so caught up in being sad that 20 years later you're still in that exact same place. But before you try to make it better, sometimes you just have to acknowledge it and let yourself be. And that's uncomfortable, but it's a necessary part of the healing process.
Right. How do we handle other people and other situations or people saying, you just need to get over it now? How are we supposed to know when they're right, when enough time has passed of experiencing an emotion and actually appreciating it and respecting it?
Yeah, it's tough because as a society, we don't like to see other people sad, and that's because we're uncomfortable with ourselves and our own emotions. And when other people are sad, it's a natural tendency to try to cheer them up or push them forward, or, you know, you tell jokes to somebody and you think you've made it better, but really you haven't. And so, you know, as a society, it's important to let people be, let them just be with them, and it's okay to sit with them when they're sad, and you don't have to cheer them up or anything. But on the other hand, yes, after a long enough time, you want to make sure that people are moving forward and they're not just staying stuck. And sometimes you just look at emotions and say, is this a friend to me right now, or is it an enemy? So, for example, if your sadness is a way to honor what you've lost, then it's absolutely a friend. That's helping you heal. But when your sadness becomes an enemy, it's when 5 years down the road, you're still saying, I don't want to go out with my friends because I don't deserve to be happy. And it's about making that distinction. There's no clear timeline, and it's not always 2 steps forward and then 2 more steps forward. Sometimes you take 2 steps forward and it's 1 step back. And to acknowledge that doesn't mean you're not better or that you're terrible or you're all the way back at the beginning. It just means it's a messy process, and progress doesn't always come in a straight line.
Sure. And I love that word messy, because there can't be a formula. We're all so unique. We're all so different. We're going to experience pain and emotion differently, but how do we navigate through it? Well, somewhat forward, right?
Yeah, and we really want a roadmap. We really look for validation of, you know, okay, I'm getting better. This is how I know. But it's just healing and hardship and heartache and all of that is a little bit different for everybody. So just because somebody else is doing a little bit better, somebody else seems to have rebounded faster, doesn't mean that you won't rebound as well. It just means they're on a different course than you are.
And appreciating your own journey and not comparing. Isn't that interesting? That always comes back to don't compare to other people.
Right. Absolutely.
So these 3 destructive beliefs you shared in your TEDx talk, I'd like to go into those. And the first one you discussed was feeling bad for yourself, that mentally strong people do not do that. Why would that be important for us to remember?
Well, it's important to remember that we all develop core beliefs about ourselves and other people in the world in general. And when we have these sort of self-limiting beliefs, we get caught up in unhealthy habits that keep us stuck, and they reinforce our core beliefs. And I often tell people when it comes to building mental strength, if we were to compare it to physical strength, if you wanted to become physically strong, you'd probably go to the gym and work out. But at the same time, if you really wanted to see muscle definition and you wanted to lose body fat, you'd probably also have to change your diet, because if you were eating too many jelly donuts, it would impede your progress. And that mental strength is the same. You need to set your life up with good and healthy habits But if you really want to see progress, you have to quit eating the equivalent of the jelly donuts. It's those sorts of bad habits. It only takes one or two, but it keeps us sort of like in this hamster wheel where the harder we work, the more tired that we get, but we don't necessarily move forward. So it's all about letting go of those things that hold you back.
Okay, beautiful. So I'm curious, as far as an applicational skill here, I feel like in my coaching with nutrition and fitness that I often run across the life situation that's impeding people's progress, that they're unhappy in relationships, that there's some negative vibe there or lack of communication, whether it's so toxic they should have gotten out a long time ago or whether it's something they can work through. I'm just curious, how would somebody in a situation like that apply this principle of not feeling bad for themselves?
Well, it comes down to it's okay to be sad, and the principle of self-pity is different. Self-pity is when you magnify your misfortune, when you think, I can't do anything about this, my problems are worse than everybody else's, and it's that keeps you stuck. And so to know if you're in a relationship that isn't the best or you're in a situation that's bad, to then just say to yourself, is there anything I can do about it? And it brings us to another principle, which is about focusing on what you can control. And then to recognize your choices, to say, okay, I am choosing this life. It's not ideal, but it's okay. Or is there something I can do differently? Can I ask for help? Even if you feel like you're stuck and there's nothing you can do, just asking somebody for help is a step that you can take. But when we're in a situation where we're hosting a pity party, we don't want to hear those ideas. We come up with 101 reasons why those solutions won't work. And that's what keeps us stuck. So sometimes it's just a matter of saying, okay, this is bad, and here's something I can do about it, about taking one small step forward, or I'm going to ask somebody else to help me find a solution, and I'm willing to try it wholeheartedly. I'm not just going to come up with 101 reasons why it won't work.
Beautiful. Love that. The second mental discipline tool, or things that mentally strong people do not do, is have unhealthy beliefs about others. And when you said the phrase in your TEDx talk about giving away our power, that's been a personal discovery journey I've been on, and especially in line with the 4 Agreements. I'm not sure if you've heard of that book, but
yes.
Yeah, love that. So yeah, tell us about what beliefs about others that we have that in essence cause us to give away our power.
Sometimes we think that other people can influence us more than they actually can. So I work with a lot of people who will say, somebody makes me feel bad about myself, whether it's their critical boss or their nitpicking mother-in-law, and they'll say, this person makes me feel so bad. And it's that word makes me that makes it sound as though those people have a magic wand and they can force you to feel something. And taking back your power is about really saying, nope, I'm in control of how I think, feel, and behave. And so even if the people around me do something that I don't agree with, I don't necessarily have to allow that to take a toll on me. And sometimes it's just about switching your language, because we say, I have to do this, or my father's making me do this, or my spouse is making me. And nobody's making you do anything. As an adult who lives in a free country, you have choices. And there's consequences if you don't do those things, but you don't have to do them. And sometimes that's just empowering to remind yourself, from the time I wake up until the time I go to bed, I have choices all day long, and it's up to me to decide whether I go to work or who I spend my time with or what hobbies I'm going to do. You don't have to go to the gym. You don't have to go to the grocery store. Those are choices. And I find when people just switch their language around and say, I'm choosing to do this, it can really make a big difference in their life.
Hugely. Well, and I'm curious because I have found that the more people I talk with, the more we wake up and realize just how often and frequently we have given our power away. So I'm imagining if we could picture like giving that power, and it's a tangible thing, and we've put it in people and situations and things, and it's all of those things that we think make us happy or bring about a particular response. And I believe it was in your talk that you said it was a form of people pleasing, like people pleasing is a control thing. Maybe that was, I don't know. I've listened to a lot of things lately, but what are your thoughts on when we put so much happiness in other people? And we recognize we've done that, but it certainly couldn't just be a quick fix, is it? I mean, or is there baby steps to starting to do that? Because I could imagine, having been that way myself before, it's a scary process of taking that ownership and saying, my gosh, I'm in control.
Right. And I do talk about people pleasing because we have this strange notion. We think other people can control how we think, or other people can control how we feel about ourselves. And then we think, and it's up to me to make sure other people are happy, as if we can control their feelings. Right. And when we become people pleasers, it causes us to lose sight of our values, and it causes us to become resentful and to think, I don't have enough time to do things because we're always saying yes to other people, or we lose sight of who we are, what we actually want in life, because we're always trying to agree with everybody else. And it is a long process to sort of undo that. It's about almost unlearning those things that you've been doing and then to do something else, and it's scary at first. If you're not used to saying no and you're not used to speaking up for yourself, it's hard to do at first, but after a while it becomes easier and you get more comfortable with it, and you can start to say, okay, what do I want, and how do I want to create the kind of life that I want to live? And then know that other people don't necessarily have to agree with it, and they don't necessarily have to be happy with your choices. But that's really the key to living an authentic life, is saying I'm true to my values and I'm okay with it. And if you're not okay with it, I'm still okay with it.
Wow, so many good nuggets for us to think about. Let's talk about this third one, which is when we have unhealthy beliefs about the world. And especially in your TEDx talk, I appreciated you talking about even just working hard and then having this almost entitlement attitude and thinking we deserve success and we deserve rewards because we've worked hard, and the world doesn't necessarily work like that. So how can we build up this mental strength tool of not having those unhealthy beliefs about the world?
Yeah, sometimes we tend to think, okay, the world's always going to hold me back, so why bother trying to do anything? I run into plenty of people who have that sort of attitude, that they think people like me can't succeed in a world like this. And then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because they never put in the energy and the effort to improve themselves. But then I run into plenty of other people who will say, gosh, I worked really hard for 10 years and I haven't made as much progress as I wanted, and it's because the world is always holding me back. And it becomes easy to blame other people, or for people will say to me sometimes, gosh, you've been through some really hard things. That's great. You got to write a book and you deserve that. I'm like, no, I don't deserve that because I went through tough things. But just because you've gone through 5 bad things in life doesn't mean you deserve 5 good things to happen or 1 great thing to happen. And I think when we start to keep score and think that we're owed something, that's when we really get stuck again. Because we start to wait and think, okay, I deserve something, I deserve more, I deserve better. And rather than going out there making it happen, it's almost like we sit and wait for our reward in life. And you really just have to accept that life isn't fair, and then that's okay, and that there isn't anybody out there who's handing out rewards and points based on your good behavior or your good deeds, and that it'll come back to you tenfold or anything like that. That the world just doesn't work that way. And accepting that and coming to that conclusion is actually quite freeing for a lot of people.
Wow. I mean, the fact that we shouldn't keep score, and how many people often do. And we have those like laws of the universe, and what comes to you, what you give to the universe comes back, and karma and all this. But reality, it's not meant to be a depressing attitude, right? It's meant to be empowering, where it's realizing we have more control, and that it's getting rid of our expectations or a mindset of something is deserved, and coming to the knowledge that we have that control. I sense this whole thing is about owning ourselves, our thoughts, our behaviors, right?
Right, absolutely. And some of the people I hit some hot button issues when I say that, because people will say, I worked really hard. I really do deserve success. And it'll be somebody who maybe went to college and they got a 4-year degree, and they say, okay, I'm working. I've been in the field for a few years. I'm working really hard, but I'm not making as much money as I deserve. But then when you step back and you think about it, there's a mom somewhere in a third world country who's walking down to the river every day to get her kids water. She is outworking us by a lot. And she's not making nearly as much money as we are. If life were fair and we said who was actually working harder, those people would earn way more money than we do. Or if we said who's deserving of more in life, they're going through a lot more hardships than we are. And so you think, okay, if you really were to look at the grand scheme of things, maybe you're not as deserving as you think you are.
Yeah. Well, and I find that, with my particular coaching in nutrition fitness is so often people are working their butts off, but they don't have enough knowledge, right? And they don't have a strategy, and it's not aligned. It's like trying to throw a dart at a dartboard and throwing it just at the wall instead of aiming for the bullseye. And that is a hard thing, I think, for us to accept as humans of any effort we make is sometimes we genuinely didn't know enough to be effective. But the good news is we can keep learning, we can keep growing, and getting rid of the mindset that, by now I should have achieved X, Y, Z, and saying, well, look, I'm more advanced now. I've gained more insight. I can recalibrate and keep going. That's a mental strength attitude.
Right. Because I think in our world, too, we're so confused on, we think busy is somehow productive. And if you work 16 hours a day, then you should be rich or you should be getting these huge rewards. But just because you're busy doesn't mean you're being productive or that you're putting your effort in the right place.
And it takes humility to be able to step back and say, wow, like I could do a little more focused work here. And humility is a great trait to cultivate.
Yes.
Wow. Well, this is just incredible. I probably could talk to you for hours. Amy, where could we find you online? Are you on different social media platforms, or how can our listeners get in touch with you?
Probably the best way is my website, which is Amy Morin, LCSW, as in licensed clinical social worker.com. And on there's links to my social media and articles and books and my TED Talks on there as well.
Perfect. And we'll definitely link up the TED Talk in the show notes and some of those links for you guys. If you're on your smartphone, just be sure and tap your screen and those should pop up for you right there. So Amy, here's the part where I get asked you my favorite question, which is about you specifically, not just what you teach, but how you live your life every day. What do you do on a daily basis to power your life every day?
Well, I guess I try to be more mindful, to be more in the moment, to say, how do you live for the here and now? Because for me personally, it's tempting to either dwell on the past or to try to plan way too far ahead or worry about all the things I have to do, thinking that I have to do them. So it's really about practicing more mindfulness to remind myself to get the most out of every minute of life that I have, because if I've learned anything, it's also that life is short and unpredictable, but that it's a wild adventure as long as you enjoy the journey.
If this resonated with you, please share it with one person who comes to mind. Investing in yourself is the best investment you're ever going to make, because when you improve your life, everybody around you improves their lives too. Subscribe to this channel so you are really sure to catch our next power session together, so you can continue to power your life to one of more service, value, and love. Until then, power your life today.